Japan just did something it has never done before. Its own government officially called the weather a disaster. Not a storm, not an earthquake, the heat itself. Over 11,000 people needed emergency medical care in a single week. At least 14 people are dead. And in Tokyo alone, 453 people were rushed to hospitals in just one day, the highest number since records began 16 years ago. 6 cities hit 40 degrees Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit, and Japan had to invent a brand new official weather category just to describe it. Today, we're breaking down exactly what's happening inside this heat wave, why Japan, of all places, is struggling this badly, and why officials are warning this might just be the beginning of a much longer, much hotter pattern. No guessing, no dramatizing, just the facts, the science, and the real stakes. Drop a comment right now. What's the hottest weather you've ever personally experienced? Tell me where you were and how you got through it. If you want to be the first to know every time something major happens with Earth's weather and geology, subscribe to the channel right now. It is completely free. A thumbs up also helps enormously. Let's go for 5,000 likes on this one so the algorithm actually shows it to the people who need to see it. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. What's actually happening right now? Japan's Fire and Disaster Management Agency reported that over the most recent 7-day period tracked, approximately 11,000 people across the country received emergency medical treatment for heat-related complications, with at least 14 confirmed deaths. This heat wave has now stretched into its 5th consecutive day of extreme temperatures as of this reporting, with 6 cities in central Japan, including areas in Aichi and Gifu prefectures, home to the city of Nagoya, recording temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. On the single worst day recorded, the Tokyo Fire Department confirmed 453 people were hospitalized for heat-related issues, the highest number in a single day since comparable records began in 2010. Emergency call-out volumes across the country reached their highest level since at least 1963. When Japan's modern emergency response tracking effectively began, the scale of this response prompted Japan's Fire and Disaster Management Agency to take an unusual step. In an official statement, the agency described the ongoing extreme heat explicitly as a disaster, stating it is no exaggeration to call this extreme heat a disaster, given how many people were being rushed to hospitals or dying as a direct result of heat stroke. That specific word choice matters. Japanese emergency agencies don't apply disaster terminology casually, and doing so for a heat wave rather than an earthquake, typhoon, or flood, the kinds of events the term is typically reserved for, signals just how seriously officials are treating the current situation. A brand new category, just for this heat. To help communicate the severity of what's happening, the Japan Meteorological Agency introduced a new official term this year specifically for the most extreme heat days. Kokoshobi, roughly translating to extremely hot day or cruelly hot day, applied whenever temperatures reach or exceed 40 degrees Celsius. This new classification doesn't trigger any specific mandatory government response on its own. Instead, its purpose is public communication, giving officials a distinct, more urgent-sounding category to draw public attention toward necessary precautions during the most dangerous heat events, separate from Japan's existing, less extreme heat advisory levels. The fact that this classification needed to be created at all, and that it's already being used repeatedly within its first year of existence, is itself a signal of how the country's heat extremes have shifted in recent summers. Heat stroke alerts have been issued across nearly the entire country, a nation of approximately 125 million people, and public health messaging has focused heavily on hydration and consistent air conditioning use, with fire brigade spokespeople specifically, urging residents to prioritize both as case numbers climbed through the week. Why this particular heat wave is so dangerous? Extreme heat kills differently than most natural disasters, and understanding the mechanism explains why the casualty numbers here climb so quickly. When the human body is exposed to prolonged high heat, especially combined with high humidity, which is common in Japan's summer climate, its ability to cool itself through sweating becomes progressively less effective. As humidity rises, sweat evaporates more slowly, which is the primary mechanism the body relies on to shed excess heat. When that cooling system becomes overwhelmed, core body temperature climbs, and heat stroke, a genuine medical emergency involving organ, stress and potential failure can develop rapidly, particularly in elderly individuals, young children, outdoor workers, and anyone with pre-existing health conditions. This is why the age and health profile of a population matters enormously during heat waves. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world, with a particularly high proportion of elderly residents living alone, a demographic factor public health officials specifically flag as a major risk multiplier during extreme heat events, since older adults often have a reduced physiological ability to sense rising body temperature and may be less likely to proactively use air conditioning due to cost concerns or habit. This isn't an isolated, random event. Japan's summer heat extremes have been intensifying for years, and this event fits into a documented worsening pattern rather than appearing as an unprecedented, standalone anomaly. In 2018, an earlier major heat wave killed over 1,000 people nationwide and was later formally recognized by Japanese meteorological officials as a natural disaster in its own right. In 2022, another major heat wave sent over 15,600 people to hospital emergency departments, though it recorded no direct fatalities that specific summer. By 2024, Japan experienced its hottest July since national record-keeping began in 1898, with heat-related deaths reported at over 100 nationwide and more than 37,000 hospitalizations across the full season. And in 2025, Japan recorded an all-time national warm temperature high of 41.8 degrees Celsius, with more than 100,000 people hospitalized for heat stroke over that summer alone. Set against that backdrop, this year's heat wave, while already severe just 5 days in, is following a trajectory that Japanese climate and public health officials have been warning about for years, each successive summer pushing temperature records and hospitalization figures higher than the summer before it. The broader climate pattern behind it. Meteorologists point to a specific atmospheric setup behind Japan's recent run of extreme summer heat, a persistent stationary area of high pressure parked over the country for extended stretches, trapping hot air in place and preventing the kind of cooler air mass movement that would normally provide relief. This pattern isn't unique to Japan. It reflects a broader global trend climate scientists have documented, in which high-pressure heat domes are lingering longer and building more intensely during summer months as overall atmospheric and ocean temperatures rise. We've discussed a similar underlying dynamic on this channel before when covering the wildfire-driving heat wave that struck Spain and much of southern Europe earlier this month. A heat wave separately estimated to have caused more than 10,000 excess deaths across the continent during its peak week alone. What connects these separate events across Japan and Europe isn't a shared weather system. They're entirely unrelated atmospherically. It's the same broader trend showing up in geographically distant regions simultaneously. Longer, more intense heat events becoming a more regular and more dangerous feature of summer across multiple continents. What officials are watching going forward. Japan's Fire and Disaster Management Agency has been direct in its public messaging that this heat wave shows no clear signs of easing in the immediate term, with severe heat expected to continue nationwide as the agency continues tracking hospitalization and mortality figures on a rolling weekly basis. Public concern has visibly grown alongside the numbers. One Tokyo university student interviewed amid the current heat wave voiced a sentiment officials say they're hearing more broadly across the country, describing worry about what conditions might look like as the calendar moves deeper into August, historically Japan's hottest month even before this year's extreme July heat is factored in. For public health authorities, the practical response centers on the same core measures repeated throughout this crisis: consistent hydration, proactive rather than reactive air conditioning use, even for residents concerned about energy costs, checking on elderly neighbors and family members who may be reluctant to run cooling systems, and taking heat stroke warning alerts as seriously as any other severe weather warning, rather than treating hot weather as a background. Inconvenience rather than an acute medical risk. Final thought. A government formally labeling its own weather a disaster is not a small rhetorical choice. It's an acknowledgement that a heat wave, something many people still instinctively think of as uncomfortable rather than genuinely dangerous, has become capable of producing casualty figures on par with the kinds of sudden visible disasters we typically associate with that word: earthquakes, typhoons, floods. Japan's current heat wave, 5 days in and already responsible for over a dozen confirmed deaths and thousands of hospitalizations, sits at the latest point in a trend that has been climbing steadily for years, from the deadly 2018 heat wave through record-breaking years in 2024 and 2025, and now into a summer that introduced an entirely new official term just to communicate how extreme the heat has become. Whether this particular event ultimately matches or exceeds those previous years in its final toll remains to be seen, but the pattern behind it, longer, hotter, more medically dangerous summers arriving with increasing regularity, is no longer something officials are describing as unusual. It's becoming the expectation. We will keep tracking this story and every other major seismic, volcanic, and extreme weather event happening around the world right now. Subscribe so you don't miss the update as this heat wave develops. And leave that comment below. What's the hottest weather you've ever personally experienced? Tell me where you were and how you got through it. 5,000 likes on this video. Let's go. See you in the next one.